smoking, high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes. They feel that if you are a vegetarian, you basically are immune to the heart diseases, the cardiovascular diseases, which are the number one cause of death across the globe. You have to use your heart, you have to use your brain to treat the heart diseases. You must love exercise, right? And that is what, I mean, as you said, coming closer to home, that is what my grandfather, my grandmother, my father, that's what they did. Like they would always go for a walk in the morning or in the evening, and then they would be in the group of people, 2, 3, 4 people would be together, and they would de-stress themselves, right? So the exercise is extremely important. And then when you come to yoga also, it is like you just have to keep on moving. Whatever way you want to exercise, you should exercise. The importance of the yoga is that it gives you a method. If you do it right, it exercises the entire body in an appropriate way and in an adequate dose. I cannot tell if it would be substantially different than any other exercise, but nonetheless, it brings you closer to your culture. So yoga, I would say that since you have to exercise, and if you do yoga, it is a great exercise. You must do that. It works on entire body of ours. So we should practice it. But again, I won't say that it would be better than every other exercise or anything like that. Number one. Number two, you talked about meditation, and as I said, that when they used to go in the groups of people, it used to de-stress them also. And meditation is also expected that it reduces stress. So stress plays an important role in cardiovascular diseases. In fact, there are studies that we have done at Mount Sinai in our institution, which have shown a direct relationship of stress with the vascular inflammation. And as you know, that inflammation is one of the most important contributors to the accelerated atherosclerosis or deposition of the fat in the vessels. So this inflammation, it was clear relationship. We were able to image the stress and we were able to image the vascular inflammation. And there was a clear link between the two. So if you say that meditation relieves stress, then it improves the vascular health. So as simple as that. So when you will come to the yoga and meditation put together, because both go hand in hand, basically we are doing good to ourselves if we are practicing that. There are ways, there are psychometric scales where you use them for analyzing the stress in people, and they give you a rough idea of what the level of stress is. But what we had done in this particular experiment was that we had used the fluorodeoxyglucose. Now, it is a radio-labeled sugar or radio-labeled glucose that you inject, and it goes to all the areas of the body normally which are active. If there is a cancer cell sitting somewhere, it will pick it up. So that is one of the commonest tests which is done in the people who have cancers. And you want to look at the entire metastatic activity. For example, if the cancer has spread in your body, you'll be able to trace all those places where the FDG has gotten localized. Now, it also goes into the areas whichever are the cells which are very active. For example, the heart muscle, which is always contracting, right? And if it is active, it lights up with that. So we have used it for picking up inflammation. Now, inflammation is where the inflammatory cells are, and when the inflammatory cells, they are in the region where the infection is or where the inflammation is, they are very active. So that's why they light up, and we are able to pick up. So if I'm not stressed, it will not light up. If I'm stressed, it lights up. So basically, they were able to demonstrate that on the analyses, psychometric analyses, when you looked at stress, it related or it got correlated very well to the FDG uptake in the amygdala region. So they considered it as the evidence of stress. So Why I like that paper too much is that for the first time, you were trying to demonstrate that you can actually visualize the stress, which is a very unique phenomenon. And then it correlated one to one with the vascular activity, that means the inflammation, as well as with the splenic activity and the bone marrow activity from where these inflammatory cells are coming. So basically, there was a cycle that was created. The paper came out in Lancet in 2018 in January, and it was demonstrated clearly, or December 2017, whatever it was, that it was demonstrated that there is a link in the stress to bone marrow, which releases these inflammatory cells. They home at the site of inflammation, and there is a clear-cut link between the three. People are afraid sitting at home. They are worried about they not having their jobs. Economy is falling. It's a free fall for the economy. People don't have food to put on their plates. So I fully agree with you. I mean, it's a very well thought of question, that on one hand, I'm causing the stress, and on the other hand, I'm removing the air pollution and I'm improving the diet and all those things. Where exactly are we going to be getting in? I think the balance would be somewhere there. So I would not like to say that I would like to have a pandemic to decrease the coronary artery disease. I would like to kind of mimic those situations which I have seen in pandemic. I would want pandemic to go, but I would like to mimic those situations so that I can bring a better health there, which will even relieve the stress. And then, like when you start to talk about sometime, people have also started to say that when you are around the family, basically the stress was gone. So there are multiple things, I think, which may be the unaccountable factors there. But what I meant from that initial air pollution and all that was that I want those situations to be there when the pandemic is gone. We have to help dispel the myth that women are not affected. Even if women present with symptoms, it is likely to be ignored, and diagnostic algorithm is less likely to be started and less likely to be treated, right? And hence, the outcomes are worse in women. So there is no doubt about it that they are protected during the childbearing age, but prevention must begin early as they catch up fast after the menopause. They are 10 years behind men. So if a man gets the real disease at 55, or he's like totally mature coronary artery diseases at 55, it would be 65 in women. Or if it is 45 in man, it will be about 55 in women. So they are 10 years behind the men in prevalence and severity. Even in childbearing age, however, the smoking and pollution, they still are going to be affecting the same way as they would affect even in the postmenopausal time. So smoking is a very bad risk factor here. And air pollution also, because in places like India, we must pay attention to the indoor cooking also, right? Like, I mean, in the villages and all, where it all goes on. So now, let me give it a little bit of a philosophical twist here. I have called that, I've always said that, and people look at me when I say it. I say that women are a much superior species than men. And I say it from a biological perspective. The most important thing which I was talking to you about earlier also when we were discussing about the fasting, that the biggest reparative phenomenon in our body is the stem cells. And when you look at these stem cells in women are multifold more than men, and that is the reason I call them a superior species. Now, why do you need more stem cells in women as compared to men? So the simplest way to explain that is that in the childbearing age, when they are still having their menstrual cycles, they shed the entire thick layer of the uterus every month or every 4 weeks. And then within the next 15 days, they need to rebuild that layer, which is full of vasculature. How would you build such a thick layer which is full of vasculature? By bringing in the stem cells or the endothelial progenitor cells, which make those the endometrial layer. Now, these stem cells are freely floating in their blood. So if I have my risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, high lipids or high cholesterol, and I start to damage my coronary arteries also, what will happen in man? There will be few stem cells here, few stem cells there, which will come and try to repair it. If they are able to repair it, fine. If they are not able to repair it, cholesterol will get into the arteries and man will start to develop the coronary artery disease. In a woman, these cells are free floating. There are thousands and thousands of them, or millions and millions of them which are floating there. They'll just go and simply repair the inner side of the coronary arteries. So they don't develop the disease in those times. Except smoking, as I told you. Smoking doesn't prevent that. Because once there is smoking, it doesn't let the repair occur properly. So let me tell it in a way that you have a room which has fallen down in your house and you are trying to repair it and the masons are there. Now masons are available and there was a small patch that in this room also fell down. You will call the mason and tell him to patch that also. Right? So your coronary artery is well kept here when you are building up your endometrial layer for the next menstrual cycle to occur, right? But then if you keep on throwing the water on that patch in your room in the coronary arteries, right, your plaster will not stay there, right? And or your cement will not stay there. And that is what smoking does. Smoking doesn't let it happen. Otherwise, everything else can take care of it. So in young women also, those who are smokers, it is likely that they can still have a heart attack, but that is not a classic mechanism of having the heart attack, which occurs because of the plaque rupturing or these coronary lesions rupturing. It is called plaque erosion, which is very common in the younger women, specifically if they are smokers. So just to tie it all up together, it is common in women also, as common in men, but occurs later as compared to men. Normally they are protected in their pre-menopausal days, but even in those days, the smoking is one thing which you really have to be curtailing. But then you have to start the prevention in the pre-menopausal years itself so as not to have an accelerated disease, because it literally comes with vengeance. You know, like all the 30 years lag that you have had, within next 10 years, it will be all brought up. So in women, we should not consider them immune to it. But yes, they have an advantage, but we should not squander the advantage that we have. Smoking and hypertension, by their sheer volume effect, because there's so many people who smoke and there's so many people in the world who have got hypertension, that they have most significant impact on the prevention of coronary artery disease. If we can control these two factors, we will do much good to the community. So there are few important features which I feel that we need to remember about smoking. And number one is that the smoker is inflicting the damage to oneself and to innocent others who are around him or her, right? So the so-called second-hand smoke. In fact, people are now talking of the third-hand smoke also. And what is the third-hand smoke? Where a second-hand smoker is in your presence who is smoking, and then he walks away from that place and gets to a cinema hall, for example, And on his clothes, he carries all these particulate matter and things like that, and he even destroys that atmosphere also. And there are papers now to demonstrate that when a person who is not a smoker but was in the company of a smoker walks into a cinema hall, around him there is an air pollution which starts to occur. So that is called a third hand smoke. So the smoking indeed is a significant problem. The second important point that I would like to bring out is that upon quitting smoking, even though you may not escape your lung illnesses, you could fairly completely relieve yourselves of the cardiac ill effects. So if you will like to give up smoking at any age, and which you should do, it is going to really relieve you of your cardiac problems. So you must stop smoking at the earliest time point in your life. The third important thing, smoking is one important risk factor which is substantially harmful in women also, which I just said, that it causes the plaque erosion. So it even takes away the so-called protective barrier that they have. It even takes away that from women. So it's extremely important that in our young age, we should not be smoking. And this phenomenon will stay with the men also, because it will be causing more damage to men too. So smoking in the younger age is as bad, whether it is men or it is women. The fourth important thing is people, in an attempt to quit smoking, normally just reduce it. They say, okay, you know what, now I just have two cigarettes a day, right? Or I just smoke intermittently. Oh, I smoke it only on these social occasions. I go to parties and I smoke there. So it is indeed better than the heavy smoking, but it is still injurious. So it is not that a small amount of smoking could be forgiven, or it is allowed. So ideally, you should not be smoking. And the last important thing is that all forms of tobacco or all forms of smoking are equally bad, whether you do the tobacco chewing or you do marijuana. So those are all the things. Whatever you do weed, it is the same problem. It may not have directly the atherosclerotic effects, but it may have other ill effects on the heart. For example, it causes more arrhythmias, it causes more sudden deaths, it causes tachycardias, palpitations, this, that, whatnot. So there are multiple other things. So that is about smoking. So when you look at the coronary arteries have, or every artery in the body has 3 layers. There is an inner layer, middle layer, and the outer layer, right? So the inner layer is the true barrier through which cholesterol has to go in to deposit to develop the coronary artery lesion, right? So that barrier is a very effective barrier. Now that barrier can be destroyed by either hypertension, or you are having the diabetes, or you have high lipid. Even if you have high cholesterol, it starts to hurt that. Now, in the smoke, basically it directly affects that layer, and it spoils the integrity of that layer, as well as it somehow or the other, it affects the base of those endothelial cells, and they are not able to fixate or affix themselves on the surface. And that is what I was telling you about women also earlier, that when in women, basically they are able to fix those cells again. I mean, they can relay those cells in normally, because they have abundance of or abundant stem cells. They can repair those areas, but in the presence of smoking, they cannot repair it also. So that endothelial cells, they basically are affected because of the smoking, and that is the reason that it allows the passage to the cholesterol into the cells, and that's how the whole stuff starts. Okay. And so the last thing that I was telling you about the pollution. So just a brief info there, that the satellite images that that they had recorded during the COVID-19 pandemic, that showed a sharp drop in the air pollution during the global lockdown. And many major cities of the world, specifically like Barcelona and Bergamo, so Spain and Italy, in the air pollutant, there was a drop of approximately 40 to 50% drop of the air pollutants in those cities. When you look at like those, you have heard of PM 2.5 and nitrogen dioxide and all those pollutants which are there. So, and these are the ones which are linked to the vehicular road traffic, airplane flights, or on the factory exhaust. So, all these pollutants, they had fallen down to about half during the pandemic. And as you know that during the uh, uh, Beijing Olympics also, when it happened in 2008, there was a drastic reduction in the heart attacks during that time. And now there are studies which are showing that if the PM 2.5 or that particulate material 2.5 size, if there is an increase of about 25, it has its metrics, like it is 25 micro per meters cube. So if there is a 25 increase in the preceding 2 hours, there would be a 50% increase in the odds of having a heart attack. So, like, it can vary literally hour by hour. That if you have an increase in the air pollution, in the next hour you will have more heart attacks. You know, so it is now being linked so closely that it is now being believed. And last year in 2019, in the European Society of Cardiology, there was a paper from Dr. Salim Yousaf's group from Canada, where when they were re-looking at the risk factors of coronary artery disease, air pollution emerged in the top three, specifically in the low income countries and the low middle income countries. It emerged in the top three as the most important risk factor for coronary artery disease, suggesting thereby that on one hand we may be trying to take care of blood pressures and diabetes and cholesterols and all, but on the other hand we are letting these air pollutants increase, and we may be actually losing the advantage what we are accruing from living a healthier life.